Oi.
Gremlin on the road. Right, so it's nearly Christmas and we couldn't do the real thing. So today we're in London, Ontario.
Yeah.
I don't think you're getting any presents this year, young lady. This is public. You have to bring your own skates, but you don't pay. You can just skate. Marvelous. We're trying to remember what the current version of the holiday is about. We're starting in Victoria Park because this is where London finally began to take off in the late 1830s. If you remember Louis-Joseph Papineau, the sewer-crawling hero of the 1837 rebellion in Montreal, well, there was one in Upper Canada too, and so the government decided to increase the military presence and barracks were built here on this site. The army needed food and things and services, and so more people came in, and this is how London went from a village to a town. But this is by no means when and where it started. It started about a kilometre west of Victoria Park in the forks of the River Thames. Oh yeah, they do keep up with the theme. There is River Thames, there is St Paul's Cathedral, there is Pall Mall, there is Oxford Street, there is Covent Garden Market. Everything is here. In 1793, Governor John Graves Simcoe, he was only here in Upper Canada for some 4 years, but in that time he seemed to have been everywhere. He filled them up with entire townships, a whole brand new New England, well, the first New England having gone off a bit by then, including London. So Simcoe came to this spot in the middle of his province, but back then this was the Wild West, there was nothing here. He fell in love with it and he earmarked it for the capital of Upper Canada. As often down here, things didn't quite work out as planned. The land was soon purchased from its indigenous owners under one of the early and now infamous numbered treaties, but nobody really wanted to live here. There were no roads, no water transportation, the River Thames being navigable by canoes at the most, and Simcoe also established a town on the Lake Ontario called York, later renamed to Toronto. So It's the local cathedral. So what cathedral could it be? No, St. Paul's, of course. We're in London. So it wasn't until the 1820s, 25 years later, that the town, or rather a collection of sheds called London, was laid out, and the first county officials had to be dragged here kicking and screaming from their comfortable homes on Lake Erie. And it wasn't until 1830s and the arrival of the army that it really began to form. I said this was then the Wild West, and it was, and those few men who had the guts and the persistence to be here right from the start and do whatever it took made an awful lot of money. Here are some of them. So, by the end of 1840s, London has acquired its very own elite, a courthouse, some public buildings, some amazing mansions, but it wasn't really until the railway arrived in mid-1850s that it became a city. Oh, pigeon, do you have a religion? It all started with a courthouse. And you know what? The courthouse is still here today. Before the army arrived at the end of 1830s, there wasn't much here, especially if you were an official and shady nightlife wasn't really your kind of thing. You had to entertain at home. And one of those early homes is still standing, although wasn't open. So London started here in the West End, but then it grew eastwards initially, with Dundas Street being the main thoroughfare and the High Street. Recently upgraded, it still is. As London got incorporated as a town in the early 1840s, municipal services appeared. The first of them was a covered market hall, the Covent Market, and built in 1845, it is still in the same location, if in a much uglier building. The railway arrived in the 1850s and changed the game. The tracks cut straight through the city centre, convenience over sightliness, because everybody wanted access to the easy transportation. The city boomed. Some of the pioneers, such as Goodhue, were still around to make money on it. in addition to its manufacturing, London became a major transit centre. Hotels sprang up. Emily, before first coffee.
You mean first tea?
And so back to Richmond Street at Victoria Park, which is the end of today's walk. And the second part of this trip will go north and south of the city centre, but this will be next year. So a very happy new year to everybody, and see you next time.